Welcome to the January 13th edition, a very special edition of the PFF Forecast. This is a great show. We have so many storylines going on. The Eagles are firing Doug Pederson. The Bears are bringing back the whole group. The Seahawks, what they're doing with no more Schottenheimer, Deshaun Watson, plus all the divisional games. What has happened to Josh Allen this season has been truly remarkable. The Bucs and Tom Brady's renaissance here. So we have Evan Silva, Timo, Riske, and Kevin Cole joining Eric and I today. This is going to be an absolute fucking blast. Let's rock. All right, I'm recording this before we get started because we knew it was going to be a long conversation. So I'm just going to get right to it. Let's go. Maybe I could speak English. Trust me, I speak English just fine in the actual interview. Here we go. Evan, Timo, Kevin, Eric, myself. Let's get it. All right, we have a really special podcast today because as we've done probably every few months, we've gotten the band together. And there's probably no better time than right before the divisional games happen, because I've woken up every morning this week feeling like it's Christmas Eve because there are 4 great games and there's all these storylines that are happening with the teams that aren't in the playoffs, which are making Twitter one hell of a debate. So we thought we'd bring the people that you like to listen to most on Twitter onto the podcast and talk about it. We've got Evan Silva, godfather of EstablishTheRun.com. By the way, if you have not perused EstablishTheRun.com, fantasy football fans and fantasy football players, I'm sure you're already there. But if you like hoops, they also have an awesome basketball product now too. So go check that out. We have Kevin Cole, data scientist, PFF. You may know him from his work of Russ is Overrated. So we might talk about that a little bit. And then Timo Riske, better known as PFF_Moo or just Moo. You don't really only need one name. It's kind of like Prince. Wrote an article that came out today that I thought was really fantastic about rookie quarterbacks and how to look at their seasons in a little more of a nuanced way. So you should go read that. Then, of course, it's just Eric and I. And we're doing this podcast a little bit in memory of our good friend, the Easter Bunny, Josh Hermsmeyer, who was supposed to be with us. He could not.
He didn't die, but he's not here.
Yeah, he did not die, but he's with us in spirit. Gentlemen, let's start with this. The Eagles got rid of Doug Pederson and still have Carson Wentz. And I'm going to start with you, Evan. What do you make of the Eagles getting rid of a guy who won a Super Bowl just a few years ago and kind of, turned around in some respects that franchise, but also started a revolution, on fourth down decision making? What's your take on that? Was it the right move? Was it the wrong move?
Well, I think it's not the easiest situation to parse out, but I think that a lot of the Eagles' demise, their sharp downturn since their Super Bowl win, has been due to bad luck. They have been one of the most injured teams on a yearly basis, from the quarterback to their secondary, at very critical positions on the offensive line, at wide receiver. They also have not drafted well. Like, the results of their draft picks have not been there. And we know that draft choices over the course of time really, it can go either way. And at the end of the day, for the most part, draft picks are like coin flips. And their recent draft classes have not given them nearly enough. So, from the injuries, which can very often be chalked up to bad luck, to the bad luck in the draft, I think that those have been the two primary drivers of the Eagles' downturn. But with Doug Pederson, you can also go back and look at that coaching staff that they put together during the 2017 Super Bowl run, and how it has really disintegrated, especially on the offensive side, and how much success Frank Reich has gone on to have. And, they lost, other coaches from that staff, and it was never the same after they lost all those critical offensive coaches. And I think that Howie Roseman is like Jeff Lurie's boy. And I think that Jeff Lurie is one of the best owners in sports. But I think that he believes in Howie Roseman. And I think that Howie Roseman is a really smart guy. And I like his many of his, the ways that he tries to build a roster. He's been aggressive in the right spots to go trade up for guys like Carson Wentz or Andre Dillard. He's been, he's been a guy that's been willing to take a lot of shots in the draft as well. I think he's been aggressive when the time has been right. I think that he has put a significant amount of talent on the roster over the last few years, but not being able to supplement it with young talent in the draft, that's what I think is coming back to bite them. But I think that Lurie believes that Howie Roseman is still the guy to get them out of this, and Doug Pederson was not.
What do you think?
I mean,
go ahead.
Do you think that our view of them in 2017 was based partially on good luck too? Because I think a lot of the things that they've had that have been issues that have been pervasive for a long time. Like they won the Super Bowl in 17. Jordan Hicks was hurt. Carson Wentz was hurt. Jason Peters was hurt. The kicker was hurt. And
wouldn't that speak to great coaching?
I think so, but also variance. Like they were astronomically good at fourth downs, not only from making the decisions, but also from the outcomes on those. They also took a real swing of the bat on Nick Foles, a guy who previous year in Kansas City, they had to basically reteach how to throw the football. Like a lot of good luck things in 17. Like I don't think they were brilliant in 17 and then all of a sudden stupid, to Evan's point. I think it was sort of very good luck followed by some bad luck, and then a couple things that I think they made bets where the outcomes were asymmetrical in the sense that you look at I agree that they bought into a lot of good players, but the players they bought into are older, right? The players they bought into, the Andre Dillard, like the draft picks they made, I thought were good players, but they traded up for some of them.
Sure.
So I am on the side of their situation is bad now. They didn't get there by being stupid, but they also weren't the smartest franchise in the world when they won the Super Bowl in 2017.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you make of the situation? Like, do you think this was the right move, even though maybe it was not the common sense one that people would have made in the public on Twitter or wherever?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the right move. I'm probably more skeptical of not the value of coaching, but knowing who the great coaches are. And I think that a lot of the points that Eric brought up, and I've done some research looking at this. Yeah, for 2017, they were on a roll. They were at the craps table and they were on a roll. They were converting third downs. They probably converted 15, 20 more third downs than they should have just based upon expectation. They player under pressure was way up. Fourth downs, they were going for it a lot. They still go for it a lot. The problem is they don't convert now, and they were converting at a 60, 70% clip when it came to fourth downs before too. And then, Nick Foles, for all you want to say about him, I looked at the highest variance quarterbacks out there, and Nick Foles is like top 3 of any of the guys who have significant playing time. Carson Wentz is also right up there at the top. So I think there was kind of a little bit of a perfect storm of everything coming together for them in 2017. So you have that, and then if you look at the breadth of the performance for the Eagles, 2016, Wentz's rookie year, not so great statistically, at least there. Huge jump in 2017, which we've talked about, and then a decline in 2018, a decline in 2019, and then the bottom falling out in 2020. So you mix all that together. Can we say he's a great coach? I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning coach. I think that's what we can say. Can we say he's a great coach? I don't know. And then you layer on top of that the fact that it seems like the relationship is broken with Carson Wentz. And that's at least that's a ding saying he's not a long-time coach, right? This is not his third or fourth stint where you could say he's been successful with all of these quarterbacks before. This is the one franchise quarterback he's had. Things haven't gone well. Maybe it's Wentz's fault. Maybe it's his fault, but we just don't know at this point. I think it's easier to find another coach that you can bring in there than it is to repair all these relationships that have gone south.
Yeah. Timo, it was interesting because I was reading your article today about rookie quarterbacks, and obviously people want to talk about Herbert, and there's some interesting stuff in there about Josh Allen, but I found the Hurts thing maybe the most interesting because of where he was in relation to Deshaun Watson was the one that stuck out to me. So if you're looking at this move now, say, okay, Doug Pederson's gone, Like, what does this mean? What would you do with the quarterbacks? What do you think the Eagles will do with the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they fired Doug Pederson pretty much tells me that they want to continue with Carson Wentz, right? Because as Kevin said, that the relationship between Doug Pederson and Carson Wentz probably wasn't salvageable. So they couldn't really get rid of Carson Wentz because of the contract. And I'm not sure someone is trading for that contract. And even if they traded him out of Philadelphia, he would leave a lot of dead money. So they either make Carson Wentz the backup to Jalen Hurts, or they give him another chance in 2021. And I think they will give him another chance. And I think the fact that they fired Doug Pederson pretty much reveals this. Which is obviously not good news for Jalen Hurts. Because as you said, he looks like a high ceiling guy. His rookie season was very comparable to what Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson did just 2 years ago. In their rookie seasons, they didn't look too good either. But obviously, with the right coaching, they succeeded. So it would be an interesting storyline if they actually hired like Greg Roman to be their coach and try to work with Jalen Hurts. But it would be interesting to see. But I don't think this will happen. I think they will try to make customers work.
That would be such a bummer, right? Because I think my take on Jalen Hurts is, we don't know, but we know a decent amount about Carson Wentz, and it has not been good.
Yeah, I don't. But what's nice about the Hurts situation is that he played enough this year where I don't think he's not going to get another chance, right? Like, he's probably of that like Jake Delhomme sort of level of enticing, right? Delhomme started like 2 or 3 games for the Saints. Mm-hmm. Eventually he got a shot for a curious team, right? Bridgewater was somewhat the same, although he had more starts, of course. But like, he's going to be, I think, sought after by a desperate team at some point. Like, let's say Wentz returns to a league average quarterback next year. There's going to be some team that will call about Jalen Hurts. And he'll get a shot again. He's not done starting football games in the NFL.
So my read on this is I think it's really funny to look at what the Bears did, okay? The Bears have sucked. They have not been good. And they are running it back with Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. They're saying, you know what, like, it's going to be hard to find someone new. Maybe we can climb back to the playoffs again. Who knows? Let's just, fuck it. Let's run it back. At least this gives the chance. Now, maybe I'm reading it completely wrong, but it gives the chance for the Eagles to say, you know what? The chance of being good wasn't worth it for us. We don't think we can be great with Doug Pederson. Let's go try and be great. So, in that line of thinking, let me proffer Joe Brady. He's out there. Let's say you want to build a new culture, right? You want to scrub it clean. You want to say, look, we believe in Howie Roseman. I think Evan makes a really good point. Like, Howie Roseman has done some things in the draft that have not looked good as a result, but from a process standpoint, have been good. So you trust that guy. You bring in Joe Brady. You say, hey, we're going to let you do what you want to do. And maybe Joe Brady is the guy that can identify what Jalen Hurts can do, and he turns into Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin, you've been a little skeptical of Joe Brady. I think there's reason.
Oh, you have? This is news to me.
No,
please.
No. I mean,
please,
I was just looking
tell me
at
your
his
skepticism.
resume.
Is Joe Brady
do you know what he was
overrated?
doing 4 years ago? 4 years ago. From 4 years ago from now, he was a graduate assistant. 4 years ago.
Should we all go around and talk about what we were doing 4 years ago?
No, but I do think
this is unprecedented. Zach Taylor is maybe close. People want to mention McVay, but McVay, if you talk about real solid leadership type experience, he was, multiple times what Brady has had so far here. So maybe it'll work. Maybe it will work, but I'm just skeptical about bringing in someone that you're most concerned with the scheme, you're most concerned with the system, you're most concerned with this pumping up the offense, and not all the other 500 things that a head coach has to do.
I think that's more than fair. I mean, the thing about it is Brady is the best play caller of the men available, but the head coaching job requires so much
leadership.
More of you.
Evan, how do you try and figure out whether you think a guy, because that is a huge part of coaching, right? But we don't have metrics necessarily on that for offensive coordinators. So what's your strategy for deciding whether someone could be a leader or not?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean,
That's kind of what I was hoping you would say.
Yeah, that's people on the ground that, like people that are in the cocoon have a much better notion of that than do I. Like Greg Roman has been a highly successful offensive coordinator for a really long time, but no one inside the league looks at him as a potential NFL head coach candidate because he's kind of like soft-spoken and nerdy, and I think that the conventional wisdom is you have to get a guy that is like a leader of men. There are two more things I wanted to say about the Pederson versus Howie thing. One is that the Jalen Hurts pick, which was derided by everyone, or by so many people except for Kevin Cole, who said it was like the best pick in the draft.
I feel like all of us in here liked it a decent amount.
That kind of gave Howie Roseman and the Eagles a parachute to where, hey, maybe they have to hold on to Carson Wentz for another year, but they've got another option now. Who's going to be cheap, and really allowing them to deal with the Carson Wentz contractual situation. Another thing was that the way that Jim Schwartz coached the Eagles defense, and he's been their defensive coordinator for forever, was kind of like minus expected value, I think, because they would just sell out. I mean, they would stop the run. They have been like a dominant run defense team for year over year over year, despite having problems in terms of talent, in terms of injuries, consistently year over year in their secondary, and that made them a sitting duck for year over year for opposing passing games. And I always thought about that, like, geez, like, shouldn't Jim Schwartz just ease off the pedal here? I mean, they're holding opponents to 2.8 yards per carry, but they're giving up 8.4 yards per passing play. Mm-hmm. And I think that at times also worked against them. So I do think that they needed to clean out the coaching staff. I mean, I think it was probably time, and I'm probably maybe a little bit too biased toward Howie because I just believe in him in general, and he hasn't gotten enough results recently. But I do think that there's more positive to be taken away over the last 3 or 4 years from what Howie has done, or from at least Howie's potential, than the coaching staff was not pushing this thing forward, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also think the league has moved so swiftly away from what Jim Schwartz has been doing. You look at our coaching metrics, he's a top 10 guy in 17, but he's a bottom half of the league guy now. And I think it's because, Brandon Staley gets all the love, but I think the Bills do it, the Chiefs do it. Teams that are sort of like building, coverage first, front seven,
Patriots
second,
did it.
or like
Dolphins, I think, do it.
Yeah, they're lapping the league right now. And then guys like Jim Schwartz, who try to call it the way they've been doing it their entire career, are falling behind. And it's okay. It's okay for those guys to retire. The league changes.
Yeah, that's fair. What about the Bears? What do the Bears do next? I mean, you leave Nagy, you leave Pace.
Yeah.
You don't have a whole lot of assets here. You do have some talent.
Is Nagy the problem?
What do you think?
I don't think Nagy's the problem. I think Nagy is a distant third of the reasons why the Bears
rank the Bears culprits.
Well, the first one is the variance with Trubisky. Like they swung and missed at Trubisky. That's reason number one. Second reason is Ryan Pace, and the third reason is Nagy.
How can Trubisky be number one? The decision makers are the ones putting him in there.
Yeah, but if let's say Trubisky played like 90% of what Mahomes is, none of these problems exist for the Bears.
Okay.
That's
all right. Timo, where do the Bears go from here?
I don't know, but I think if you want to call Nagy the problem, the problem is probably that he made Trubisky actually look good sometimes. Like it's so hard for Nagy because the question is, do we want to hold against him that Trubisky is doing nothing against good teams, or do we think it's a good thing that Trubisky is at least killing the bad defenses, right? Because every time Trubisky plays the Lions, he looks like Deshaun Watson out there, right? And that's a little bit weird. So there's a very big discrepancy between how Trubisky is playing against solid or good defenses. Like he couldn't do anything against the Saints, he couldn't do anything against the Packers. But whenever he plays those Vikings, those Lions, or the Texans, he can just crush them. And obviously that's Nagy helping him there. So
but don't they need to realize
I don't
that?
think he's the problem. But he made Trubisky look too good sometimes.
But we saw that. I mean, I agree with you, Timo. I mean, the issue is we saw the graphs, what they look like in 18. You PFF grade on X and EPA on Y, and Trubisky's way off the Y equals X line. And it's like Matt Nagy did a great job. Last season, his only mistake was basically saying, okay, I need to find out if this guy's a real quarterback. So he tried to call an offense that leaned less heavily on the design runs, et cetera, and he looked like crap. And what the bet Nagy made, which was likely, if I stretch Trubisky out here and he looks like shit, they'll get me a new quarterback. And they didn't fully embrace that, right? They went and got Nick Foles. They split the difference. And is that Nagy's fault? I guess Nagy's at fault for saying, hey, if you're going to give me this set of parameters, I want Nick Foles. Yes, that's a mistake he made. But the fact that they didn't go back in, that's Pace's fault, and it's Trubisky's fault for not developing.
I mean, this is Pace's fault, right? I mean, I'm sorry. I know executive of the year. I have to preface that with a former executive of the year, Ryan Pace. And I think at the Khalil Mack trade, I'm not even going to say that was bad. Like, you didn't know exactly who you had in Trubisky. You're going for it. You're pressing that window. But we know. I mean, we've known for a couple of years now that it's gone. So you don't double and triple down. You don't say we're going to spend a bunch of money in free agency on a 30-year-old pass rusher. We're going to continue to draft, a tight end in the second round. The year before, the only draft pick they had, of course, it was until the third round, and then they're taking a running back there. The year before that, they're taking an inside linebacker and a center in their first couple of picks. I mean, you can question some of the getting the right guys or not, but the process hasn't been there. Continuing to double down hasn't been there. And the contracts that they're giving to guys, even guys like Eddie Jackson, who's great, obviously, but you're continuing to press on something, push on a string that just doesn't seem to be working. So at some point you have to cut bait. And I think the big problem with what they did today is not just say that they're going to stick with them, but they're sticking with them on a short-term sort of deal. I mean, you don't want to extend them out. You want to get rid of him probably, but you don't want to extend him out. But now, again, it's going to be, what have you done for me lately? It's going to be, what can we do this next year to get over the hump again? And it just delays the eventual clearing of the decks that's probably going to need to happen.
Yeah. I was even more impressed. I didn't think the Seahawks would do this, but they did move on from Schottenheimer. Now, it kind of points to maybe the issue with their offense was never Schottenheimer to begin with. Who the hell knows, right? But not moving on when feeling bad for these guys is not something that I'm going to do. Like, they've made millions of dollars and all this stuff, and their contracts are enormous. You have to be able to move on from these, different positions when they're just not working out. Like the Doug Pederson one, you could have even liked Doug Pederson and been like, hey, it's just not working out. Maybe we won't get married. Happens. What's your take, Kev, because you've talked a lot about Russell Wilson, on the Seahawks? Just open-ended question. You must have many thoughts on Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, the Seahawks in general.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I feel like this is a bad sign, Schottenheimer being gone. I mean, you have back-to-back Pete Carroll coming out, and people are hitting on this fact that he said we need to be more efficient running the ball. But if you listen to his exact statement, he said we need to be efficient running the ball. And then he says, well, not even efficient. We just have to do it more. So he specifically said we just have to do it more. And that's what he wants to do. And he says everyone's in agreement with that. Russ agrees with that. And then the next day, a couple days later, they fire Schottenheimer saying there's a philosophical difference. So if anything, you would have to assume that means for all these Seattle Seahawks fans who may be of the let Russ cook contingent, who are happy about Schottenheimer being gone, to me, it signals the opposite. It signals maybe Schottenheimer wasn't the problem. Maybe you shouldn't be burying this guy who's taking orders, and eventually pushed it far enough that he was let go for the fact that he's pushing Carroll out of what his comfort zone is. And that's what Carroll wants to do. He wants to be reactive to what the defense is doing. He wants to say, we're going to run when you're telling us we should run. And that's going to be our underneath quick passing game. We're not going to do it in any other way. We're going to use the running game to do that. So it's just really tough to figure out what they're going to do going forward. I think whoever this OC is going to be an interesting hire, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's someone who really fits the mold of, a road grader, if someone's going to come in there and want to run the ball.
Does this underscore the fact that, with rare exceptions, having a defensive-minded head coach is probably negative EV?
Probably, unless in a few years we have guys who are like Brandon Staley, who are thinking in the opposite way. But the dominant defensive thinking is stop the run, and then you counter back on that. So, of course, when you flip to the offensive side of the ball, why wouldn't they have that same paradigm?
But not only that, but even if you attract brilliance in the position, they go, right? Like take a look at, Mike Zimmer is like the biggest defensive-minded head coach of all time. You have a former Eagle guy, John DeFilippo. He doesn't do what Zimmer wants. He's gone. Right? Pat Shurmur comes in. He does a great job. He's a head coach. Kevin Stefanski does a great job. He's a head coach. Like you give rise, and it's happened in Seattle too. You give rise to an immense amount of instability in offensive philosophy, right, when your head guy is a defense. Because the best case scenario, the guy comes in and is brilliant,
3 years,
and he's gone.
Yeah,
and or the worst case, he comes in and he's dog shit, and he's also gone.
And think about the turn. It doesn't mean that defensive coordinators are not great, but it's like not understanding the market from an ownership perspective or a GM perspective. Think about how great Robert Saleh has been for so long, right? And he's probably going to get a job this year, right? But there's one defensive coordinator a year that's going to be, in that position. Meanwhile, we're talking about Joe Brady. Joe Brady, to Kevin's point, was in diapers 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Like the ability to keep a defensive coordinator that's good for longer is just possible. I will be interested, and this will transition us to the Dolphins a little bit, who ends up in Miami with Brian Flores and how they kind of continue. What do they do on offense? And maybe a sign of that would be, what do they do at the quarterback position? Okay, Deshaun Watson is out there. So I pulled up the draft. We redrafted the whole league during the summer. If you didn't check out that podcast, you go back and listen to it and laugh because it's hilarious, some of these picks. But I'll read the first 5, 6, maybe even more picks. Okay. First pick, I had the first pick. I took Patrick Mahomes. So I won the draft. From that point on, we have Lamar goes 2 to Josh. Eric takes Russell Wilson at 3.
Overrated by the overdrafting, according to Kevin.
Okay. Evan looks like a genius, took Deshaun Watson at 4. Kevin took his boy Kyler Murray at 5. Timo took Matt Ryan at 6. I took Dak Prescott at 7. Josh took Joe Burrow at 8. Aaron Rodgers, to you, Mr. Eager, at 9. 10 is Evan Silva taking Carson Wentz. We'll just erase that one. Yeah, we'll just delete it.
He makes up for it on his next pick.
Yeah, that's true. Kevin takes Baker Mayfield at 11.
Which is a good pick.
Yeah, looks good.
Great pick.
You get Kevin Stefanski with him. That's the deal. Matt Stafford at 12 to Timo. Another pick that I will erase, I took Jimmy G at 13 with Tom Brady, Jameis Winston, Ryan Tannehill, Josh Allen on the board. God, do I feel like an idiot. And maybe the pick of the draft ends up at number 22, where, of course, Evan takes Josh Allen at 22. Some other notable things here. The first non-quarterback to be taken right after Josh Hermsmeyer took Dwayne Haskins to the strip club at 26. Chris Godwin at 27.
But can you go back and read the rest of my picks in that draft? Because they're actually fairly good.
Travis Kelce, Derek Carr.
Derek Carr is a good third-round pick.
Yeah.
I rebounded. I rallied.
Then the next ones were a couple picks later. Jalen Ramsey. Looks like a great pick. That was Kevin Cole. Timo took Derwin James. May he rest in peace. I took DeAndre Hopkins at the back of the first round. And the last pick of the first round was Aaron Donald. So some interesting stuff to take away from there. But let's talk about Deshaun Watson here. Let's start with you, Timo. If you're the Dolphins, what are you willing to give up for Deshaun Watson?
I mean, obviously, Tua. You might throw, no, you can't throw out Ryan Fitzpatrick for good measure. He probably doesn't matter there. But, Tua, the third overall pick, they still have, do they still have another first round pick this year?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the third overall pick is used.
They have their own
right?
pick, so.
Yeah, they have their own pick. So there's 2 first rounders plus two, and I mean, if that's not enough, I mean, throw in another future pick, like the second round pick or even first round pick from 2022.
Because the Dolphins have the Texans' second round pick too, right?
Yeah, they could give the Texans their draft back.
Yeah.
It's like the movie, right? So we give you a pick that.
So, Timo, are you if you have the second pick and we're redrafting now, are you taking Watson?
So we are drafting for the next 5 or 6 years. Definitely Watson, Patrick Mahomes, and then Watson.
Kevin, you're in agreement?
I think so. Although 2 through 5, if we redrafted it today, you could just random shuffle order probably on those guys for the next few years, and that's what will end up happening.
Yeah, Evan, what do you make of the Easter Bunny and the Houston Texans situation? And Deshaun Watson, will he be able to arm them into actually trading him? Like, big takeaways. What do you think's next for them?
They're just in an awful position. I don't know. Besides Deshaun Watson, they have virtually no assets. I mean, Will Fuller's a free agent. I guess Brandon Cooks is all right. J.J. Watt is really getting up there in age. He may want out as well. I mean, I don't know who would want to go there and even work in that infrastructure where it already looks like there could be problems between Nick Caserio and Jack Easterby, and Cal McNair it doesn't seem like he really cares about football, being their owner, taking over Bob McNair. He just has no clue about it. They don't have the future assets because they traded so many of them away. They are just a talent bereft team. It might actually be in their best interest at this point to just trade everybody, trade J.J. Watt, trade Deshaun Watson, because they're screwed. Like they have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, a legitimate MVP caliber quarterback, and they are awful. So, I mean, that pretty much tells you all that you need to know. I guess they got some pieces on the offensive line, but I mean, they could trade those guys away too. Like, they should probably hire Sashi Brown, rip this thing down from the studs, and just start all over.
Kevin just sat up
try to get a package like what Timo mentioned there in exchange for Deshaun Watson. That actually may be in their best interest. I know that sounds insane, but they're in horrible position.
No, that makes perfect sense. You just said it. They had a top 5 quarterback. Deshaun Watson was the 3rd highest graded quarterback this season, and they were terrible. Like, you can't. What do you expect him to be even better next year? No. Do you have means to go bring in a ton of new pieces? No. So what are you going to be next year? You're going to climb your way to 9-7 maybe? Like, your goal is to compete for a Super Bowl. So I think Evan hits the nail on the head, and I think that's why he might get traded, because maybe somehow, some way, Caserio or however.
But how long is that rebuild?
But he's in the perfect spot to do it because he just got hired.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I'm wondering about the rationality of this group of people.
Look, that's fully on the table. Okay, so Timo offers you that trade.
If I'm there, I take it because.
What would you counter first?
I mean, I'd ask for more picks.
Okay, what would be too much? So that's kind of what I'm like. What is, if you were the Texans GM, how much do you think you could extract from Timo, GM of the Dolphins?
Well, Timo, not as much. Like, Timo's smart. I don't.
Right, I know. I'm just saying, like, you're.
I mean, I try. The problem is I'd have to have some sort of vision about what those would look like. But yeah, I would need probably on the order of 3 to 4 first-round picks, but like there isn't a player young enough on the Dolphins to make me maybe Tua, but I don't even think I would put Tua through that. Like, if I'm starting
the whole thing of attaching a quarterback seems to be a little bit weird to it. Yeah. I mean, I think we can appreciate having that duality option, but it just seems very strange to trade a pick who's going to become a quarterback and then also trade a quarterback. But what about the Jets? I mean, wouldn't you want, if you're the Texans, wouldn't you want that Jets pick instead? So at least you get your choice of who's going to, of the second pick, rather than say whoever's around for the third pick?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm starting over Houston, I am probably, I don't even know, like, wouldn't you, if you're like how the Browns did it, right? Where you just kind of take a year and Jake Delhomme's your quarterback, or whoever. I'm trying to think of who was, Kevin Hogan and Cody Kessler, and it's like you wait a year because the infrastructure is so dog shit that the guy's going to suck anyway, and you're like,
are you saying that the Texans are going to take Carson Wentz and his salary?
I mean, they should,
and get some picks along with it? Because I mean, that might be what I would do. Kevin, I think you're right though, because if
they don't have the salary cap space, but yeah,
I mean, if they traded everyone away, they might.
Yeah.
So if I'm the Texans, the last thing I want is to make Tua, because the Dolphins are going to try and value Tua like a first rounder, and they're like, no, screw that. Like, I want all the picks and all the power, and the Jets have very similar amounts of draft capital, right, Kevin? So you could,
via Jamal Adams, right?
Yeah. Would you rather
they have those picks? What about I have a couple of other interesting ones. I think everyone's talking about the picks. This doesn't happen as often, but if you were the Cardinals, would you trade Kyler Murray plus, I don't know, one first rounder, more than that? Kyler Murray's got another few years of cost control. Deshaun Watson costs, $40 million a year. Well, could that happen?
Wow. Get the band back together?
I don't think so. I mean, then you'd fire Cliff Kingsbury too, right?
Oh, well, that's fine. I would be very happy to do that.
Okay. All right. the fake shark, Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, I mean, I would. So I'd say that's one that popped out to me as like, is there an actual quarterback? Because you see these trades where they're like, oh, what if we traded Kirk Cousins plus 17 first-round picks? It's like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants Kirk Cousins, okay? Nobody wants to not have a quarterback option. I was trying to think of any quarterbacks in the NFL that they would actually want, because they're going to want a guy who's on a rookie deal still, has cost control, who shows promise, but clearly isn't as good as Deshaun Watson. Although if we would ask people at about week 8-ish, they might have said that Kyler Murray was as good as Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I also think even right now people don't quite appreciate him as much.
Yeah, so wouldn't most people might think Kyler Murray plus even one first round pick is too much. I would say I would do that in a heartbeat if I were the Cardinals.
Yeah, I would too. I don't think they will though. I don't think they will. Any other thoughts on Deshaun Watson? And I want him to go to the Niners. I don't think any of their deals could compare to what the Dolphins or the Jets could offer. I don't know who else might be out there. Maybe the Bears.
I agree. I love that match on paper. I think you guys talked about that on the last PFF forecast, and I did think that Eager made a good point though, in that Kyle Shanahan has always kind of wanted like a system quarterback. Kind of like a guy like that plays within structure, and Deshaun Watson is not that. But if you go back and look at the quarterbacks that historically, I guess Mike Shanahan tried to go the other way when he drafted Jay Cutler, although I think he probably wanted to work Jay Cutler into his system. Mm-hmm. But, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think they traded up for CJ Beathard, or they at the very least drafted him in the third round. Like, these are all like within structure quarterbacks. Yeah. And that seems to be the style of quarterback that Kyle Shanahan favors, whereas Deshaun Watson is a very much out of structure quarterback. I mean, I think you need almost like a special kind of coach to be able to deal with Deshaun Watson, because coaches are very high on their abilities to coach, and just letting a dude play outside of structure is not the way that most coaches have been brought up.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes what Andy Reid's done so remarkable, is that, historically his quarterbacks have been kind of in that confined group. Alex Smith, even Donovan McNabb played out of structure, but he was not necessarily good enough to be as free-flowing as Mahomes has been. But it really is why his coaching career has taken the next level, because he tolerated some of the free spirit that is Mahomes. But the Shanahan thing, he could obviously break from this, but it is telling that the one guy that he's wanted more than anybody, like it, privately is Kirk Cousins, who appears to be like the perfect don't think for yourself quarterback with a lot of talent, right? Like
I refuse to believe that.
Should we move on to the games?
Let's do it. Ravens-Bills is the first one that we're going to talk about, in large part because I want to talk about Josh Allen. Bills 2.5-point favorite, total at 50. I think this is the best matchup of the weekend, to be perfectly honest. Evan, let's start with you. Josh Allen, it's your time to gloat, talk about your boy. What has impressed you most about him kind of this year? What has been the key in your mind to this turnaround? And do you think they cover?
I just think that the key to it has been the Bills' analytically inclined build of their roster. Going from, just each year adding on. The common comparison to entering the season to people that wanted to bet on Josh Allen as a long shot MVP candidate is, they're doing the same thing that everybody did with Trubisky the year before, right? Mm-hmm. But the Bills kept built like Trubisky reached a point. He played much better in his second season after the Bears added to their offensive line and brought in better pass catchers. But then they stopped. They stopped building. And Josh Allen played better in his second season after the Bills added to their offensive line and brought in John Brown and Cole Beasley. But the Bills did not stop. They went out and got the best deep ball receiver in the league to deal with, or to help Josh Allen circumvent this weakness that he had the prior year as the worst deep ball passer in the league. And I think that everything has come together, and you add that in with, I think, one of the best coaching performances of the year from Brian Daboll, and then being willing to embrace playing spread offense, being willing to let Josh Allen run the ball aggressively, and just the on-field chemistry that he was able to almost immediately develop with Stephon Diggs. I still don't think that anybody could have seen this happening coming out of Wyoming. It wasn't there. But you go back to Wyoming, at Wyoming, they built the offense around Brian Hill. They didn't even build the offense around
as one does.
Josh Allen.
Right.
The Falcons.
As the Falcons did.
Yeah. Right. It's been an awesome season. What do we got coming up here? We got a game that I think could potentially be a shootout. It's got a 50-point total. I don't know. Keep my eye on the weather, but I think it's going to be an awesome game. The Bills are going to be without Zach Moss, and that takes away a little bit from their running game, or at least it's going to make them really lean on Devin Singletary. And so I think we're going to see them play a lot of spread. Their receivers are healthy. Diggs, Beasley, John Brown, Gabriel Davis. They've been very willing to go four wide. They've got a spread back now. And Singletary, I think we're going to see a lot of dropbacks, a lot of scrambles, maybe some, wild turnovers from Josh Allen. But I think it's going to be a really fun performance. And, on the other side, Lamar is back to playing at least I think he's, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's back to playing at his MVP level. So I'm really excited for the game. I don't know. Do you guys have any strong leans either way, from a spread or total perspective?
I'm taking Buffalo -2.5. I think, to me, Evan, you talked, I think, brilliantly about the Bills and what they've done.
Yeah.
And but the thing that they did not shy away from was that all these things come at a cost, and they sold the right thing, right? Their defense. There's no one in their front seven that makes top 20 money in the entire defense. They play too high, right? They entice teams to run. And the only reason the Colts were close last week was because Phillip Rivers partied like it was 2008 and converted third downs.
He was drunk the whole game.
Yeah. But what they did, they went from a team with a great defense and no offense and said, look, we have to turn this around because you can't win reliably in the NFL with defense. And in this game, I think what's going to happen is they're not going to play it any differently. They're going to play 6 or 7 men in the box. They're going to entice the Ravens to run the football. They're going to give up runs. There's going to be runs in this game of 7 or more yards. It's just going to happen.
Bold call.
But when the Ravens get to 3rd and 7,
yeah,
I think that they view that favorably, and they should.
I agree with you. I want to applaud Evan because you said that this exact thing preseason, which was Stephon Diggs could potentially be what allows Josh Allen to improve a ton as a quarterback. And that's exactly what Stephon Diggs has done. He has roasted people in single coverage, most yards, most catches against single coverage in the NFL. And Josh Allen has gone from the second least accurate or lowest graded quarterback, I should say, throwing to guys with a step of separation, to the second ranked quarterback in that metric. And I think to me, that speaks a lot about you didn't have a guy that could consistently win, and now he does. Kev, your thoughts on the game?
Well, I want to talk about the Bills just really quickly and how they built the team, because I think they did some really, really smart things, and they also did and hit at a rate that is out of this world as far as building through free agency and building through trading for a receiver, which normally both of those things don't work out so well. I mean, you could say Diggs is a little bit of a unique situation because you don't normally see a guy that young get traded. But if you look at the rest of their roster, I mean, they brought in Cole Beasley, John Brown, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, all these guys they brought in as free agents, and they all hit basically. What's interesting is that they spent the most money in free agency on Mitch Morse, the center, who's he's a good player, but it's kind of, that was a little bit of a strange pick there. So I think they've really just been running hot as far as those picks are concerned. So it'll be interesting to see if other teams think, specifically the Jets and maybe the Jaguars, think that they can replicate that and just go spend a ton of money in free agency and become the Bills this year. So I think that's an interesting trend. But as far as the game's concerned, these teams played last year. I think that's an instructive game for a couple different reasons. Number one, when the Titans beat the Ravens in the playoffs, they pointed back to the matchup against the Bills, and they said, we saw what they did on defense, we saw what McDermott and Frazier put together on defense, and that's what we replicated to go against Lamar Jackson. So I think this team can kind of know how to stop him. And if you look at Josh Allen last year, I mean, listen to this line. He was 17 of 39 against the Ravens last year. 17 of 39 for 146 yards, 3.7 yards per attempt, 6 sacks for 41 yards in that game. And now they blitzed the hell out of him. They manned him up, and they couldn't do anything. Zero. It was one of the worst games you could possibly have. This year, Josh Allen is a top 3 quarterback against the blitz. He's maybe the top quarterback against man coverage with Stephon Diggs there. It's just a completely opposite. So I just don't know how to think about this matchup, because it seems like the Bills have solved everything that the Ravens are doing. You almost talk about the Bills in the same way you would talk about the Chiefs playing someone. Josh Allen's a guy, if you pressure him, it doesn't matter. If you bring the blitz, it doesn't matter. You only try to hold them down because eventually they're going to explode. I mean, it's just such a contrast that I guess there's a little piece of my mind that wonders whether this Bills hot streak is going to continue, because they've just been, I mean, everything is going right. Everything's hitting for them. I
think of them as like the Chiefs light. I don't have the same confidence in Allen that I have in Mahomes, but that Chiefs-Ravens game I think is instructive too, because the Chiefs destroyed the Ravens.
Lit them up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah. Let's go to Timo first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Timo, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the most interesting game this week. And as Kevin just said, I mean, the Bills are simply the hottest offense right now. Right? I mean, I think it was since the 49ers game, and this was like week 30, so they just haven't been stopped by any team. But obviously the Ravens are a smart defense, very, very good defense. They had no problems taking away the Titans. So they stopped what the Titans usually do well. But I think game planning against Josh Allen is, and I never thought that I would say this in the year 2021, but game planning against Josh Allen is still harder than game planning against Ryan Tannehill, I think. So the Bills will still be able to score on the Ravens, I think.
Do you think that we should have been, like, how would you go back and say, okay, look, we all kind of thought Josh Allen, he didn't perform well, and we didn't think that boded well for his future. If you were talking to yourself or us back then, what would you tell us about evaluating Josh Allen?
I mean, Josh Allen was, I think Evan said in our chat this morning that he was kind of a unicorn which is definitely right. And maybe this is why we kind of fail to pick up any signal of him. Because I mean, what we do when we like analytically want to forecast a performance, I mean, what we do is we look at a player, and then we basically, whatever we do, we compare this player to players who were similar in the past, right? And then we look, okay, were these players successful? And this is how we try to get our answer. But for Josh Allen, there simply weren't many similar players, and so we kind of maybe failed to pick up some signal. But when you look at the article that I wrote today, this was like the first time that I ever looked at anything regarding Josh Allen prior to 2020, which actually painted him in a light that said, okay, this guy hasn't got good results. He didn't lead an efficient offense. He didn't create very well, but there is something that shows a very high ceiling, which maybe could point us in the direction that he might actually be more likely to hit his ceiling than other quarterbacks.
What were those things?
Yeah, because I mean, obviously his mobility. His mobility was obviously visible all the time, but it didn't really matter because mobility is like a really valuable asset, but only if you cut a certain threshold of passing ability, right? Mm-hmm. So you can be the greatest runner in the world, but when you don't have a certain passing ability, it doesn't help you. But once you cross this threshold, the mobility becomes like twice more valuable than before. And this is obviously what happened to some extent with him, but also just his willingness to throw downfield and his willingness to make plays. And this was always something that stood out with him, but it didn't really work. But it always showed like his high ceiling, so it's his confidence, and once these things clicked and he somehow became accurate. I mean, we still don't know how this happened, but it somehow happened. And this is how you get suddenly top 3, top 5 quarterback. It's
there's
crazy.
Some quarterbacks coaches that will.
It's about a lot. I mean, Evan, you started a business. You know this. There are different things that are required of you when you're trying to get off the ground versus when you're trying to stay a safe distance away from the ground, right? And like once you're an established quarterback, limiting negative stuff does feel like the more stable thing and what you can do. And then, your positives and everything are more of a result of noise and the people around you and everything. But to get off the ground, you have to exhibit some of these things that are maybe unstable to our, and that's what Timo, I think, showed us here, which is to get off the ground. It's like anything. It's like pandemics. It's like businesses. It's like everything. To get off the ground, there have to be these extraordinary things that maybe aren't repeatable, but you can, if you're capable of stringing a few of them together, now you have a bankroll, so to speak. And then from there, then it's all about limiting the negative things, doing more stable things, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's like when you're trying to, get a girl, to date her, you got to do something extraordinary.
Right.
And then, you want to have a long-lasting relationship. You got to limit the negatives.
Yeah, you got to limit the negatives. Yeah.
Let's move on.
You got to keep from the Whitlock tweets.
Jesus. Let's move on to Browns Chiefs. Eric, Richard Sherman thinks the Browns are going to be scary competitive. And what he cited was that he really likes the Browns offense. That's one thing. But that Joe Woods, who was with him in San Francisco last year, he thought had a really good game plan against them in the Super Bowl. And there was a breakdown, obviously on a 3rd and 15, but that gives him confidence that they'll be able to not get totally shredded by the Chiefs. What's your thought on that?
Good luck. The reason the Browns will win this game cannot be the defense. The Browns will win this football game because their offense has really good talent, has a good play caller, and the Chiefs defense is okay, not great. I love Richard Sherman. I think he's great. He's really smart. the talent level with the previous cover threes that have given the Chiefs problems is night and day that of the Cleveland Browns, even if Denzel Ward returns. Like, I mean, they were the meme of that, like, security guard, like, basically barely touching somebody against the Pittsburgh Steelers the other day. Even the interceptions were like off the hands of somebody, or their defense sucks.
Eric just learned how to use GIFs on Twitter, and he's really, like, flexing on us here. Okay, do they cover? Do the Browns cover?
I would not bet the Chiefs minus 10. I would either bet the Chiefs minus like 13.5 at like plus 140, or at a 6.5 at like minus, I can't remember, like 210 or something like that. Like, to me, 10's a weird number here. I think the Chiefs either blow the doors off of the Browns by like 3 or 4 touchdowns, or it's like a touchdown game.
Yeah, spread is 10, total is 57. The Chiefs have not blown out a team in quite some time. Evan, can the Browns offense keep this close? What do they need to do to keep it close?
Yeah, the Chiefs have not won a game by more than one score since week 8 against the Jets.
Yeah, wow. Juggernaut.
I think their offensive line has had problems. I mean, certainly missing Mitchell Schwartz, and it doesn't look like he's going to be back.
He's not playing this week, nope.
And that's the side where Myles Garrett lines up.
Yeah.
So I think that there are some avenues. I bet the Browns to cover 10. We'll see. I don't feel very confident in it, but I'm really interested to see how do the Browns approach this game, because over the last month, adjusted for game situations, the Browns have been the 7th pass heaviest team in the league according to ESPN Stats and Info, and they have been very willing to come out early in the game, throwing the ball. Like, this is, the textbook ideal way to play. Come out, throwing the ball, grab a lead, and then, lean on that dominant rushing attack and just, put their opponent away. And they can do that. But, the Chiefs are pretty good in pass defense. I think you can hurt them in the middle of the field with guys like Austin Hooper and Jarvis Landry potentially. But, they also are, historically, the way that I think people inside the NFL have viewed to play the Chiefs is you want to run the ball a lot, keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. And we've seen that happen a few times over the past couple years. And the Browns have the guns to do that. I mean, they're getting Batonio back. They have a kick-ass offensive line. They can play 2 and 3 tight ends. They've got 2 great backs, They can absolutely play that way. But I'll be very interested to see their game plan as they go against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are worse in run defense than they are against the pass. And so does that influence what
the Browns decide
is going to do here?
Yeah. I think that's by design, though.
I agree.
Yes. But, I know.
Yeah, but that's the question. Is like, can you design Stefanski away from?
Do you become the Bills against the Chiefs on that Monday night game, where you entice them to run, but you are so bad at stopping the run and so bad on third downs that it bites you in the ass? Like, that's the way the Chiefs lose this game.
Yep, I agree. Well, and Mahomes I would think, have to not play great.
Yeah.
Kev, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to me, and I think obviously the Vegas agrees, this just seems like a total mismatch, honestly, across the board. And I think for the Browns to win, a few things will need to happen. I think Myles Garrett is going to need like multiple strip sacks, maybe. That would be the only chance of doing something, since the Chiefs obviously have a lot of issues with their pass protection, especially on the outside. We'll see who's back and playing in this game. So I think that has to happen. And if I were the Browns, I would probably like fake a punt, maybe throw in an onside kick, a random onside kick. Jarvis Landry, I think Jarvis Landry will throw at least one ball in this game on some sort of move, because they don't have the athletes. Yeah, I don't think they have the athletes to beat the Chiefs at how you normally beat the Chiefs, which is some explosive plays down the field. Unless you think Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be the man on this here. The rest of their receivers probably are averaging like a 4.8 in the 40-yard dash right now. So they're going to have to run the ball. But I think if the Chiefs really, really lean in and try to stop the run, they have a better chance of doing that than the Browns have a chance of being able to to really produce these explosive plays down the field. I just don't see it happening. And the Browns defense is just so bad at stopping the pass. I don't think there's any scheme or any way that they can play things that's going to matter, because they just don't have the speed. I mean, in the middle of the field, Travis Kelce is going to just be roaming free at all times. And after the catch too, that's another thing. After the catch, the Browns are awful after the catch. They don't tackle well, and they don't have athletes also. It's just a really, really bad matchup.
The Browns are also without Olivier Vernon, who got injured in week 17. So they're really one horse as far as edge and rushing the passer.
Browns keep it close, or the Chiefs blow them out, Timo? Which one?
I mean, that's quite interesting, because obviously the Chiefs didn't blow out any teams lately, and even if they took like 2-score leads or 3-score leads against the Bucs, against the Dolphins, like even in the third quarter, and then they let them come back a little bit. So I wouldn't be. I mean, I'm confident that the Chiefs offense can score on the Browns offense whenever they want. And but I wouldn't be too confident in the Chiefs covering the spread of 10 points. But actually, I mean, what I wrote on Twitter sometimes this week is like, say the Chiefs start the game at 0-17 or maybe even 0-20. I think I would still bet on the Chiefs to win the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in fact, that's how
I'm more confident in them erasing a 20-point deficit than covering a 10-point spread right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. Even if they were to go up, like if they were to get a lead, I'm more confident in the Chiefs when they're losing.
Yeah, well, I think one of the better things that happened to them, in addition to getting the bye, was seeing the Cleveland Browns capable of getting a 28-0 lead on another team. Sort of Pittsburgh.
And then allowing the amazing Pittsburgh offense to come back.
Pittsburgh doing in round one what they did against Houston in round one last year, getting down huge.
Tampa Bay is a 3-point underdog in New Orleans. Obviously, they've gotten beat by double digits both times they played the Saints, week 1 and week 9. Week 9, it was 35. However, I would make the claim that this Bucs team is a little different. Total of 52 in New Orleans, as I said. Timo, this is your team. Tom Brady, second highest graded quarterback in the NFL this season, highest graded since the bye. Is this Bucs team different enough to beat the Saints, and why?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, it's weird because when you look at the roster, I mean, obviously both teams are incredibly talented, but I mean, the Buccaneers, obviously, I think at this point it's obvious they have the better quarterback. I mean, Tom Brady just aged better than Drew Brees. I don't think there's much of a question. They have the better receivers. It's not close. I mean, the Saints have Michael Thomas, but he was hurt during the season, and Mike Evans is healthy again, as it seems, and Tony Brown and Chris Godwin are also healthy. So they definitely have the better receivers. I think when it comes to offensive lines, there isn't much of a difference, but the offensive line of the Bucs has been very, very good this year. I don't think there's much of a difference on the defensive line. I mean, I think the Saints defensive line is more talented, but obviously the Bucs defensive line is so aggressive, and Devin White is coming back, which should help the pass rush enormously because he's so good at blitzing. I mean, much better than Kevin Winter, who played last week. So so the Bucs have the better team, I think. But there's one thing that tells me the Saints might still win this game is because they have the better coach. Sean Payton he played with Todd Bowles like in the last matchup. Like, Todd Bowles had no chance at figuring out what Sean Payton was doing, and the same happened on the other side of the ball. Bruce Arians played 4 games against the Saints now with the Buccaneers, and each time they couldn't do much on offense. They didn't get any easy plays. So it's just a weird matchup because Bucs always seem to lose the coaching matchup in this run, and this makes it really difficult. But on the other hand, I mean, as you said, the Bucs offense has been so good lately, and of course you have to give some credit to Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich there because they
do you
they have Yeah, I mean, even I do. That's crazy.
Because go ahead.
They have changed some stuff after the bye week. I guess we also have to credit Tom Brady a little bit, because I read that they're actually running some plays out of New England now, which they hadn't done before. So I guess these three, so Arians, Leftwich, and Brady, they probably sat down, said, okay, losing to the Rams, this isn't it. We have to change something. And yeah, but the question is this enough to win the coaching matchup against Sean Payton? I don't know.
Yeah, I want to ask Evan this, because Evan is a friend of Sean Payton, and you guys have a close relationship, and I have a ton of respect for Sean Payton. I think he's one of the best coaches in the NFL from a leadership and a scheme perspective. Is this really Sean Payton versus Bruce Arians, or is it Sean Payton versus player coach Tom Brady? Because I have a hell of a lot more faith in player coach Tom Brady than I do Bruce Arians running Leonard Fournette into a brick fucking wall every play.
Yeah. I before their bye, and the Bucs had the latest bye in the NFL. I think there were two teams that had Week 13 byes, Panthers and the Bucs, and I mean, that's just a long time to go without a bye. But heading into the bye, the topic of conversation around the Bucs was that they were running too much of Bruce Arians' offense, and way too many like 5-step drops in the trying to go vertical down the field, and Brady was throwing the ball poorly down the field. And when they came out of the bye, as Timo mentioned, they started to incorporate more stuff from New England. Their play action rate has gone skyward, has skyrocketed. I think they're at 27%, and
it was 17 before.
Yeah, so since their bye week, and I think they needed some time to incorporate. I mean, they added Antonio Brown during the season. Like historically, like when receivers move during the offseason to a new team, they often struggle with their new team, let alone joining the new team during the season. And so they had time to incorporate him. And I mean, they're healthy. They're healthy on the offensive line. They're healthy in the pass catcher core. I think that Gronk has looked better, like on a weekly basis. He looked terrible early in the year, and he's looked more athletic the more football that he has played. So I think they are a different team than the team that got blown out twice against the Saints. Now they may lose. I mean, the Saints might be the most talented team left in the playoffs from top to bottom from a roster standpoint. But no, I think it's
so it's the Bucs against the spread for you?
I think so. Yeah.
I think that's the only underdog that might be chalk this weekend that people take is Tampa plus the 3. We have it from and to Timo's point, which I think is excellent. The power rankings make them about 2.5 points different. The matchup is really whether or not this game covers for New Orleans or not, because I think against an average team, these two teams on average play about 2.5 points differently, but the matchup is a little tricky here.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that this is a different Tampa Bay team. Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, 4th and 5th highest graded wide receivers since the bye. Like, there's a quarterback wide receiver relationship that appears drastically different since then. Kevin, I'll let you have the last word on this game.
Yeah, I know we were all about defenses don't matter, but this Saints defense, they could be the best defense in the NFL.
They could be.
And, Brady had been awful against pressure, but he was decent last week. So, I don't know. It's like the combination of pressure, not only from the outside, but from the interior in particular, and corners who match up pretty well against the wide receivers, and specifically against guys like Mike Evans. It's just a bad mix for Tom Brady and for the Bucs. So I guess I would lean maybe towards the Saints, although I get the point that I think if you were going to ask people just randomly, who do you think is a better team right now? A lot of people might say the Bucs are a better team, but yet they're the underdog here. So I can see why people would want to lean towards them. But I just think the Saints are a pretty complete team. And then you add Michael Thomas to the mix, a healthy Michael Thomas. I think they're looking pretty good as far as how they match up here.
Yeah, maybe they get Taysom Hill more involved. That'll really help them out too. Rams, Packers. Who the hell knows how healthy Jared Goff will be, but Aaron Donald is going to play. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey there for the Rams defense, the number one defense in EPA allowed per play this season. They are now a 6.5-point underdog in Green Bay to MVP Aaron Rodgers, highest graded wide receiver in Devontae Adams, highest graded cornerback in Jair Alexander. Adrian Amos has played spectacularly. Obviously, David Bakhtiari, highest graded pass blocker, will not be there. So I'll let you start this one off, Eric. You've got Aaron Rodgers, been on fire, Devontae Adams on fire, and this is a defense that everyone is giving a lot of respect to. Are you willing to do the same?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go under in this game, though. I don't think that the Packers will lose, but I don't think it'll be easy for them in any way, shape, or form. I just wonder if Jared Goff on that side of the ball is going to be able to score any points.
Kevin, would you, if you had Ramsey versus Adams, I know you just wrote a great article about Devontae Adams, are you giving, how much of an advantage are you giving to one side or the other?
I mean, I think I would give Adams the advantage here, although it's difficult to say. I mean, I feel like Jalen Ramsey, it's not that he's not like a technician or whatever. I'm sure he is, but he's just going to out-athlete a lot of guys. That's kind of what Benjamin Solak was talking about when he was on my podcast recently, and I think that's true because I was saying I think DK Metcalf is probably a much better matchup for Jalen Ramsey than Devontae Adams. So that's going to be the question is, Devontae Adams has a average depth of target of like 9 yards this year. He's not going down the field. What Ramsey's going to do against him, making up space down the field, being physical, all the sorts of things, it's going to be at the line or it's going to be nothing for a lot of these passes. So I think it's probably not as good of a matchup for him as it can be against wide receivers who are either a lot smaller than him, so he can just really body them, or guys that he can really use his speed against.
So does that mean you're taking the Packers? If you had
I don't know. I feel like Rodgers, if anyone, I still feel like he could just put up a dud in a big spot more than some other quarterbacks.
You know who else does? Our friend Ben Baldwin. Definitely feels that way.
Does he? I thought he's pro Rodgers now.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Evan, what's the difference maker in this game for you?
I think the Jalen Ramsey Devontae Adams matchup is so interesting. First of all, George, you earlier mentioned like the on-field relationship between a quarterback and a receiver. There's no quarterback receiver relationship, I think, in the entire NFL that is more like unbending than Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, and Devontae Adams is like the ultimate technician. And he's also got about 40% of his production this year in the slot, and Jalen Ramsey's only been in the slot 11% of the time. Now, the Rams may make that adjustment and let Jalen Ramsey chase Devontae Adams into the slot. But I expect Devontae Adams to be moving around a ton to try to make it as difficult as they possibly can for Jalen Ramsey to chase him around. And even when they match up, because of that on-field relationship and because of Devontae Adams' ability to win just as a technician, and look, he's playing offense. He gets the first step. The rules are working in his favor. I think he has a big game here.
So you're a Packer
and I think,
fan.
Further cementing Aaron Rodgers, which, by the way, PFF was way higher before the season, namely on Aaron Rodgers' chances of winning MVP, which, I mean, based on his performance over the previous 4 seasons and how little the Packers did in the offseason to help him, it seemed kind of crazy to me. Yeah. It seemed crazy to me. But Aaron Rodgers is about to win MVP, so that was an excellent call by PFF and by Moo, and hat tip for that.
We will thank you for gracing us with your presence. On your way out, give me your Super Bowl matchup and pick.
Gosh, I haven't even thought this far ahead.
That's the point. Gut reaction. This is who it's going to be, and here's who's going to win.
I mean, if you want to talk about teams that I got money on, then we could do that. But, that's who I'm really rooting for. I mean, I'll say Kansas City, Green Bay. I mean, I think that'd be a pretty good Super Bowl. But I'm hoping for Buccaneers, Ravens, or Buccaneers, Bills.
Okay. Packers take it?
No.
Evan Silva, we love you. We thank you.
All right, guys.
See you,
Later.
brother.
Good luck with all your bets.
Yeah, we'll need it. Alrighty. I don't know if you guys let's do a quick Super Bowl matchup and pick before we get out of here. If that's cool.
I'm going to be chalky. I'm going to go Packers, Chiefs.
You're gonna have to give me a little more energy there.
I think the Packers were undervalued going into last week. I still think they're a good bet out of the NFC, although the odds have more reflected that. But the Chiefs will have a tough AFC title game, but I think that they'll pull through. And Super Bowl I all over again.
And Chiefs win.
Man, that's tough.
Putting you on the spot.
I would make it Chiefs -2.5.
Okay, so he thinks the Chiefs win. Kevin.
I'm going to do that lame thing where I say that I picked the Ravens-Saints at the beginning of the year, so I'm going to stick with it.
That is lame.
But I would say that those are the two teams, though, that I believe are the most undervalued versus what their true potential is to get there. So for that reason, I'll stick with them. I mean, otherwise, you're going to say, oh, yeah. Otherwise, I might say Chiefs, Saints, but I'm going to stick with those two. I'm going to stick with the Ravens because of the fact that I think they have a legit chance to win a couple of games to get there.
And who do you have winning it then?
I don't know. It's a tough one. I'll say Saints. Why not? Drew Brees,
Wow.
Retirement. Could you retire after winning a Super Bowl? I guess you can, right?
Yeah, he would have to. I think based on how he's played. Timo, I mean, look, if you don't put the Bucs in here, I don't even know what's going on.
I mean, I think from the NFC side, I actually think that Saints versus Bucks is already the NFC title game.
Oh, interesting.
I think the winner of this game makes the Super Bowl. So since Kevin picked the Saints, I mean I can't make the same. So I actually say the Bucks make the Super Bowl, which I will probably regret.
No. And who will they
on
face?
the NFC side, I mean, I think again the Chiefs are the favorite. But let me make a bold prediction here and actually go with the Ravens. Because I mean it would be such a fun story because it would be so similar to what the Chiefs did last year, right? Like the Chiefs in 2018, they were destroying the league. They had the first seed, and then they somehow lost in the playoffs to the Patriots. And the Ravens were very similar last year, right? So they destroyed the league, got the first seed, were the big favorite, and then they lost to the Titans, which was not good. And then in the next season, the Chiefs, they had their problems. Patrick Mahomes got injured. They already lost like 4 games halfway into the season. They didn't look good for them. Then they got the bye week, and then they obviously won the Super Bowl. And it was very similar for the Ravens, right? This year, they didn't look good in the midst of the season. And then they had this moment against the Browns, right, where it looked like they would lose against the Browns. And I think if they lost against the Browns, I think they wouldn't have made the playoffs. I don't know. But yeah, now they are in the playoffs. They beat the Titans. They couldn't beat last year. And I think, yeah, it might be their year.
Okay.
So they get revenge and they get to the Super Bowl. And I think if they get to the Super Bowl, they will win it.
I like it. The Chiefs-Packers is obviously chalky. So I'm going to be a little different. I'm going to go Bills-Packers. Josh Allen's story has to end that way. I think they have to make the Super Bowl. I think the Lambeau advantage is huge. I really do. And I think the Packers then beat the Bills in a little Rodgers, Josh Allen, Spider-Man meme thing. So that's my take. I've now been abandoned by 2 people. You guys have managed to stay with me, so I appreciate both of you. Thank you guys for hanging out. Special thanks to all those guys for hanging out for all that time. Timo was up in the middle of the night from Germany, and that was a lot of fun. So appreciate all those guys hanging out. We, of course, will be back with you on Sunday night. Now, Sunday games are a little earlier this week, so we'll get to record a little bit earlier. That podcast will be out. I actually think maybe we might try and do something a little live this weekend after the game. So stay tuned for that. Obviously, the PFF live show will happen on Saturday. We're going to do that starting at 3:15. So go check out the PFF Twitter account. It'll let you know when that's up. That'll be on the YouTube channel. And yeah, let's have some fun this weekend. I will hopefully talk to all you guys on Sunday. See ya.